Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Gautrain Management Agency's book club, the e-lounge. The e-lounge is one of our knowledge share platforms anchored in our strategy and also aligned to our values as an organization. The values of caring, the values of excellence, leadership, and of course, learning. We are very honored today to have in our midst Pepe Marais. Pepe Marais is the co-founder of Joe Public, one of the leading creative agencies in South Africa. He is in conversation with our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Tsepo, and they will be discussing two books that Pepe has written to date. The first book on review is The 20 Habits That Break Habits. The second book on review is Growing Greatness, a journey towards personal and business mastery. In these two books, the golden thread is that they are about finding purpose, they are about personal mastery, they are about creating a personal plan. I think Pepe is the only person that I've come across so far who has a 25-year plan for his life, and he is making himself accountable to that plan on a day-to-day basis. You can expect in today's session a conversation about purpose, a conversation about discipline, a conversation about being able to fall down and picking ourselves up and looking forward to greater things and erasing whatever mistakes that we would have made. We encourage you, and I do encourage you to please read the books because they certainly will change your life. Do engage in the conversation today by asking questions and sending through your comments. And I must emphasize that you will learn a great deal if you actually read the book. The book, one of the books, come with the warning from the publisher that it will change your life. It certainly has for me, and I think that it will do the same for you. So thank you very much for joining us, and do engage. Thank you.
Welcome everybody to another e-lounge. An exciting day for me. At a personal level, somebody who I have a big question for, who I want to ask, why didn't he become an engineer? Because our space as engineers would have become much more creative and much more interesting than it is. But I am happy that he chose the direction that he wanted to go in. Growing Greatness, a journey towards personal and business mastery. And the second book, out of Growing Greatness, The 20 Habits That Break Habits. He plays with words. He's in the industry where words are used. And as the singer from Depeche Mode says in the song, Personal Jesus, reach out and touch the faith. An abstract concept, obviously, when you reach out and touch the faith, because faith is something you cannot see, but you believe in. But still, he's asking you in the two books, reach out and touch the faith. Pepe, welcome.
Thank you, Tsepo.
It is always an important moment when we get here. And sometimes you ski like me, so I go a bit off piste, so.
I'm not quite off piste yet.
Sometimes you go off piste, but I am going to stick to try and stick to the script today and what do they call it. So I go off the script because my first guest said to me I must disrupt the script. But you've disrupted South Africa with two books. Interesting books that to me is almost a bear it all. And intriguingly so for somebody who has had his own challenges with being out in the public and everything else. For you to tell your story like that, it's quite intriguing. Pepe Marais is the founder of the company Joe Public. They started out to do what's called takeaway advertising. He'll tell us more about takeaway advertising. He's gone from, in the probably the 18 to 20 years that he's been at this business, from being the new kid on the block to being #1 in the league. Pepe, above everything else, who's Pepe?
Sure. Above everything else, I suppose I'm just a guy who's trying to improve my way of being every day as a husband, where I fail often. It's always interesting how tough we are on the people closest to us. And I try and be a better father. And I suppose I try and be better every day at my craft, which is advertising. And then, yeah, just being a better leader. And there's huge room for growth there as well. So just on a journey to being better than my best.
The craft, the advertising. What keeps you awake probably 7 days a week? You did promise in the book that you no more do it 7 days, you try and do it 6, but tell me more. I mean, you grew up in Stellenbosch, and the people you knew there, their fathers that were there were engineers and everybody, and you had decided you're going to become a civil engineer. And I won't say out of nowhere, but out of serendipity, you went into advertising. Tell us more about that.
So you said, we spoke earlier on, you said you're one of 4 brothers. My father was one of 4 brothers, interestingly. But he was the black sheep of the family. So I was born into this home with this raging alcoholic. And because of whatever his back problems was, they didn't have many means together with my mum. So I always aspired. I saw that the people who had nicer houses and would drive nicer cars were engineers. So in my school, the rich kids' parents a few of them were engineers. So I always wanted to become an engineer to make money. So there wasn't really a love for, there was somehow civil engineering. I don't know why. I don't know where it even came from, but that's what I wanted to do.
There isn't money in that, I'll tell you.
So I wouldn't even know. I just meant engineer. But it was civil engineering, and that was my ambition, but it was not driven by a love for that craft. It was more driven by a want to have money. And then I met a graphic designer on the border of Namibia, back then Southwest Africa, and Angola, who was a graphic designer, and I don't know what it was. I saw his portfolio, whatever he was doing there with his portfolio, and I saw this thing that he did, and I went, this is what I want to do. And that's what I went to do. I just went straight into art school and became a graphic designer.
Have you thought about that moment? I mean, there are so many moments in people's life that change them for good. I mean, for you, that one moment changed you for good. Have you thought about that moment and thought back? And you know, I always say to a lot of people is, what led you to where you are? And you had a moment. I mean, you were coming from the war. You had just learned how to play guitar so that you can impress Heidi. And that would have been the only thing I'm thinking about. I mean, here you are thinking about careers, and yes, you were still looking to go and find a life. But what in that moment, actually, if when you look back at it, would have changed so much?
I'm smiling because you read my book. I don't know enough about you. You know everything now, but it's fascinating, you know. So old South Africa, if I think about it, and it's no judgment on engineering broadly, but my stepfather years later was a civil engineer, interestingly, and it was just interesting to see how people remained with quite a narrow mindset. You know, when you came from the old South Africa, you'd think you changed with the new South Africa. A lot of people stayed pretty much in the old mindset. I would think one of the biggest things for me that changed was it got me into an art school. And art school by nature was just more liberal. So back in those days, my principal already had black friends, which was completely like, that was frowned upon. And they were speaking about the release of Nelson Mandela. Back then, I didn't even know who Nelson Mandela was. So that moment, that serendipitous moment of meeting some stranger on the tarmac, waiting for like it was called a Flossie, C-130 Hercules, to fly us from the border back to South Africa, to Cape Town. It's almost like a biblical intervention, because it would shift me so much, because I got into art and I got into music and all these forms that brought me closer to being more liberal, coming from a very narrow-minded background. And then going into advertising, which would make me even more liberal, and then becoming part of the new South Africa because of it, truly.
So coming from there and getting out of our school, top of your class, of course, 3 years in a row, and that's still interesting to me for you to go from war to art and to 3 years in order they call it in a row, being top of your class. And obviously, you know, you believe in measuring everything. In those years when you were studying, were you already measuring, or was it just something that came by?
No, it's so interesting. So school, I was average. I always joke, I say the only A I got at school was for average, except for maths. Maths, I actually did get an A for maths, but everything else I did standard grade. And in the end, I wouldn't be able to become an engineer because I didn't get my university, what do you call it, my bachelor's.
Yes, yeah.
So I think my average was 54% at matric. End of matric, I got a 54. So I was never really good at anything. And even at sport at school, you know, I was skinny, I wasn't very sporty. I didn't think I was sporty. So to find art by chance and then to really become exceptionally good at it was something new for me. So I wasn't measuring at all. I just found a passion and I poured my heart into it. I remember I worked 7 days a week. I worked on weekends to pay for my studies. And I was a barman at a squash club. And I would do my art on the counter. So I created so much more work through my passion for it that I just excelled every year at this thing that I found.
After you excelled, you decide you're going to start a business before you're 30. And you do so, sitting somewhere up the hill here in Melville, and which intrigues me, you know, but Melville has always been about art and everything else. And you then sell the business.
Yeah.
But we'll get back to the building up of the business and then ultimately finding your passion as it is now. But you know, building the business up from where, you know, you once slept in early for, what do they call it? I couldn't think of the cold of being in Cape Town and sleeping in an alley. How hard was that to build a business?
Sure. So the idea of having my own business was born at art school. And of course, first I had to get experience. And when the time came, because I said before 30, and I met my partner also in a very very strange way. And also on top of that, we had an amazing idea, takeaway advertising. So an ad agency where the costing model's based on the restaurant. So there were a few things that were playing, again, very serendipitous. Like the meeting of my business partner was quite profound, very profound. And then this idea of takeaway advertising, which we thought will change the world of advertising, inspired us enough to give up everything and just start from scratch. We know in South Africa 80% of small businesses fail within the first 3 years, and then 90% of them remaining over the next 7 years will fail. So the success rate's extremely low in our country. It takes a superhuman effort. I mean, now it's, of course, I don't work as hard as then, but I would say 16 hours a day, 6 days a week at least for the first 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, really relentless amount of effort to keep that thing alive. So yeah, it's an extremely enriching journey, but the effort is tremendous.
Talking about meeting Gareth, and let's go back to you and your surfing. And you ending up on Doluses. Did you know that Doluses were actually created in this country? It's
I
actually
I actually do know that.
It's actually
Yeah,
a patent
I
that
know
is held
that.
in this country.
Because I know them well.
Yes. You coming into contact with the Delaces and
Yeah.
then getting saved and then only to find that, you know, later on. Tell us a bit about that story. To me, it's your life is full of so many
Crazy.
miracles. It's just unbelievable.
Crazy. Look, I would say when people start looking closer to their own life, you'll find we all have a lot of miracles that we just don't see. And I suppose writing a book starts putting a spotlight on these things. Kind of reminded me when I saw it, I was like, geez, there's a lot of things that happen that's quite, like just, you almost can't explain them. But Gareth, the story with Gareth was incredible. I think I know it's 1995 in fact, because it was the World Cup.
Okay.
The World Cup was June or July in 95. And April is when the big storm hit Cape Town. The first waves of the season comes in April. I was a paddle skier, which means we ride the wave sitting down. Surfers don't like us much. It's frowned upon as a sport. Very Afrikaans sport in South Africa. Anyway, and I took a massive wave and got washed by this might of this wave into the Dolose at the Radisson. Today it's the Radisson, back then it wasn't. It's called Thermopylae, old ship there. And I drowned. So I experienced death. And I remember the last thing before making peace with the fact that it's my end of my life, I prayed to God. And this, I suppose, is one of the reasons why there's a true belief that there must be a God, because every single person, even the atheist, when you face death, you pray to God. And when I came to, I was floating on a roll of red pipes, rubber pipes in the ocean, and the NSRI came and picked me out. There was an ambulance, and I never knew there was human. I thought it was an act of God. So I didn't know there was a human that took me out from under the Dolose. Only to meet Gareth in 1998 for the first time in my life, and over a beer, he told me, when he found out I'm a paddle ski, he started telling me about this idiot who drowned at Thermopylae a few years ago, that he had to go and swim and go and save this idiot's life. And I had to tell him that, well, that idiot's me. And hence, I think it was such a momentous moment to discover that there was a human being that saved my life. It didn't matter whether he was a good businessman or not, or we just went, okay, well, we're partners. Let's start a business together. And that's the founding story of our business.
Eventually, you find a corner shop on the same logic of the model of, what do they call it, of a takeaway advertising. Yeah. You could order, medium rare or well done. And that's intriguing. It's such a simple model, and it works on advertising. But you're passionate about ideas, and I want to talk to you more about that. And you in my industry, I've seen it in civil engineering. I used to be in consulting. I've seen civil engineering nearly dying out because of people wanting to get paid for their hours rather than for their ideas. And when you started your business, was that always the core, that you want to be able to be paid for the craft, for coming up with the idea?
Yeah. And I think that's what we lost through the years. It's an industry challenge that we do face. But back then, the takeaway model was based on ideas. So we've got a price point for rare, we've got a price point for medium, we've got a price point for well done, for the idea. And it doesn't matter if we take 1 hour, 10 hours, or 20 hours to come up with the idea, that's the cost. And then based on the idea, we had an executional model, which was different to the idea model. But it was completely based on pay us for ideas, pay us for our thinking, and not for our time. And I'm still very passionate about it, although our business model in South Africa today works on hourly based, which you can make lucrative if you employ a lot of people, but I still believe it's not the right way to run a business that deals in thinking. Because suddenly you almost, it will make more money if you're actually slower with lesser thinking. But that's an ongoing passion of mine, and something I hope to still change in time to come. But the takeaway model still runs in Amsterdam today. Highly successful little business out of Amsterdam. and it runs on the menu, and they sell, they get paid for the ideas.
That's interesting. When I was still in consulting, we used to say engineers are like farmers. You know, there's the old adage, if you gave a farmer R1,000,000, what would you do? He'd farm until the money is finished. Engineers are like that. If you give them R1,000,000 to engineer, they'll engineer until the money is finished. It's amazing that you say advertisers are like that. They will continue, you know, with the work that they do until the R1,000,000 is gone, which is quite strange. And that's the business of ours. People don't think of, you know, I've got a client behind this business and everything else. But coming from there and your passion for ideas and ultimately, you know, getting to a point, how did you guys get convinced to sell off your business to a multinational?
So there wasn't much money involved. So I can tell you now, it wasn't for money. But the idea, because when we came up with takeaway advertising, our vision was to change the world of advertising and leave behind a legacy. Stars in the sky, like this thing can go worldwide. We'll have takeaway agencies all over the world, because the idea was so provocative. You know, to completely change the model of the sort of smoke and mirrors of advertising. You know, put it transparent, tell people what you're charging for your ideas. And what came with the offer from a company called IPG from New York was that we could open an office in New York. So the idea of having Joe Public in Cape Town and New York was what made us jump the boat. And not understanding business well enough, we sold off 100% of the business for a few cents and some change, you know, because we wanted to expand this dream of ours. And then realized after the fact that they were just after our bottom line.
Again, a moment happens. And you get tired of one of your directors' racism. And you have actually had to have him, you know, haul over the coals for that.
Yeah.
And he leaves and becomes a marketer for one of your biggest clients. Again, a moment that creates that changes your life again.
Yeah, yeah. It's actually fascinating. I coined the phrase, I put it in the book, the worst thing that can happen is the best thing that can happen. Because that moment, knowing where I came from and how hard I had to work to recondition myself, because it's just conditioning. I mean, you're not born into the world a racist, but if you're born into the right household, you can be conditioned to become a racist. And to grow out of that conditioning took a long time. So to have a senior member of staff behaving inappropriately, I couldn't tolerate it. And hence I did fire him, not knowing that he'll go and work for our biggest client. So one could say that's one of the biggest businesses stuff-ups in life, you know, lose half our business overnight because of it. But the gift was that it enabled us to afford to buy the business back. So the integrity actually paid off. At face value at first not. The integrity cost us half our business because we literally retrenched from 68 to 30 people overnight. So we lost more than half our staff by losing that client. But the net effect over time became the opportunity to buy the business back, which in my book then goes, integrity pays. Stick to your morals and your values.
Interesting. The having to retrench people, I mean, you had gone through it a couple of times at that point, but it's always one of those things that changes you for life. I would tell you that from being a director of a large multinational consulting company, when I went into my third one, my heart couldn't take it anymore, and at some point one needed to make his personal decisions. But you go from not having your business 100% to now, you know, over the years buying back the business and ultimately getting it back. And once you had gotten it back, you now chart a new course. But it doesn't just happen just like that, to chart a new course. Not only in the business's life, but in Pepe Marais' life also. What ends up being the tipping point?
2006. So 2006 is when we retrenched the one exec, who then went to work for our biggest client and fired us. so that loss, that trauma, that's why it's always easy now to look back and say there was a benefit. But in the moment, it was traumatic, you know, cutting those heads. I mean, it is super traumatic. So the business failed, and at the same time, my marriage was busy failing. And at the same time, I was not healthy. So I worked excessive hours, but I also drank a lot and sort of partied a lot in the after hours, or the in-between hours between work and work. And my aspirations to become rich failed. So 2006, my life it felt like it was falling apart. And I think that was the turning point, was looking at it and going, this does not make sense. That the guy who started working at the age of 11, that's a hard worker with a lot of talent, because I exceeded at art school and even at my jobs before starting Joe Public. And the net effect of all my effort is zero. It just didn't make sense. So I had to go and figure out what was going on, because life did not make sense. That you can work hard and still fail. That you can have all the talent and still fail. And the turning point came towards the end of 2006, when I found quite radical transformational workshops that deals with life purpose. But my wife actually went and did it first. I think she saw that we were busy drifting apart, and she wanted to try and find a fix. And she changed. I could see she shifted, and I didn't like it. So I thought I'll go and see what these workshops are about, because it didn't sound legit. And I had an incredible life experience with this workshop, which gave me an insight on life purpose. And because I'm strategic, and because I'm a creative, but I'm very logical. I'm good at maths, and I'm strategic. And the insight I gained made so much sense to me that I applied it to my life. And my life literally, over the first 6-12 months, but like a radical change. And I thought, I'm onto something here. The application of the learning, so I'll give myself credit for applying the learning, because we often go to workshops and we learn new knowledge, but we don't apply it. And I apply. When I pay for something, I don't waste my money, I apply my knowledge. And the shift was profound. And it's that insight that I brought into business, because I thought, if this works on a personal level, it has to work on a business level.
And you had to go to Midrand Nogal. Everybody says there's nothing there except polo drivers and townhouses. And tell them you did find Jesus.
You know what's so sad? That amazing, and there's two camps on what happens in Midrand. What happens in Midrand stays in Midrand. But there's two camps. There's a camp of people that do that sort of work, that starts and finish, that will say it's the most profound experience of their lives.
Yeah.
Then there's a camp of people that starts and 2 days later jump off because they can't go for the whole course, and they'll slate it. So you'll always, if you go and look at it, you'll find some negative publicity there, as with anything. But unfortunately, the good work that I believe they did there came to an abrupt end now because of COVID. So
you can't co-locate.
So they don't exist anymore. They shut down.
Okay.
They had to stop their workshops. But yeah, Midrand was where I found the insight center that gave me a profound insight on life.
That brings us to a big issue, and it has bothered me through the book, the 2%ers. And the 2% of people who come back and they found profound change. And it's the same 2% that, in today's world owns most of business, the same 2% that will bring up innovations, it's the same 2% that will come up with the most incredible artwork and everything else. How do we grow that 2%, Pepe?
Yeah, sure. And that 2%, I've actually realized it's even less. Because the 2 out of 100 that really are impacted to a level that they start changing their lives, that's 2%. But then I started realizing to apply to an absolute, almost like a obsessive level, is 2% of the 2%. So it's 1 in 2,500, which means out of a population of 60 million, it's probably 24,000 people that's got the ability to push, to really take the country forward. It's minuscule. So my thinking on that subject is the only way potentially to change that is to start at school. So to bring the thinking and the notion of purpose for life at a subject level into the curriculum and plant that seed at a younger age, because I find when you're already adult and we become so clever and we know everything, you can't tell me anything, it becomes very difficult to change that course in life. And I think that's why the percentage is so small. We don't start young enough.
Okay. Now, having to talk about the 2% that find their weight, the one weight that people stand for. For us as the Gautrain, it's transformation. Transforming spaces, people, and the economy through mobility. For you and for your business is growth and greatness.
Yes.
And I still want to come to your offices. Every time you talk about your offices in the book, I relish to come and see what they look like, and so that, probably I could learn something from how you've done your offices. But most people never find their one weight.
Yeah.
And to me, it bothered me through the book, but why is that so? You've just explained because we don't start it early, and by the time people are set, as it said, like at 6 years, you will relearn all, either the good manners or the bad manners that you will grow up with. But is there a way in which we can still grow the 2% and then have people find their one weight that defines what they stand for?
I suppose that's what I'm trying to advocate through my books and through every single keynote. I don't do a keynote, and I do a lot of them now. I don't do any talk without talking to purpose, just to start planting the seed. But maybe, well, firstly, when we speak of a concept of purpose, you already have to be so far up the hierarchy of need. I mean, we know 80% of our population just want to eat, because we've left most of our nation impoverished.
So they all want Wi-Fi.
So you can't even speak at that level about purpose, because I just want to survive. Don't talk. So actually the market to talk to purpose is the top 10%, if you're lucky. And then out of that top 10%, you'd find that the majority of people are very happy with what they've got. So I had to find purpose through going through hell, through hitting a brick wall. Now, I don't want everyone to have to hit the brick wall, so I'm trying to just plant a seed in people's minds that there is far more potential within each of us if we have the clarity. You've got your birth name given to us by our parents, if we're fortunate enough to have parents, but you've got another being name. You've got a human name, but we've each got a being name. We do. I know that I know it for a fact. A deep unconscious reason for being on this planet. And once you have that clarity, it can profoundly steer you into a different direction in your life. Or you don't even have to go a different direction. It can just amplify your current direction. So I love your purpose word for your business. When you said it to me the first time, I was like, I could feel that that's authentically what it can do as a business. And what I find is when you apply it strategically on all levels, the finances become a natural byproduct. It naturally starts flowing. Like it's just fun. It's insane. I said to my wife last night, it's just unbelievable how the money comes naturally in the amounts that we need to have a good life, because we're not concerned about the money. And it sounds very privileged to speak like that, but I shifted when I was bankrupt. So I didn't make the shift when I had money. It becomes easy to talk like. I started speaking like this when I had nothing. And then the money started following my actions and my intentions based on purpose.
Talking about that, but you had a Titanic to 10. You had a business that was thriving. and you were now in the mode where things were now going the right direction and you were now getting entrenched. And for me, what became interesting and the question is, at that point in time when you believe in something so much, and now you're trying to get everybody to believe in it the same way, what kept you going?
Just the purpose. So now I've got a personal purpose, and I founded the business, which is like my child, and I know now that the business can't have my purpose. It's individual. It's like my child can't have my purpose. I work for my business. It's not even my business because I work for my business. I mean, Mervyn King says, once you think your business is yours, you enslave your business. But the purpose inspires me. And I think that's maybe the big challenge. I think defining the purpose and putting it on the wall is one thing. That's probably another 2%. The 98% is delivering on the purpose. And so I realized over the past decade of being a purpose-driven business, for the majority of the decade, the purpose was just an intention. And it took COVID and it took my MBA studies to really realize how far we're off truly delivering on our purpose. But the intention already got us a certain way. It got us a certain, it didn't just stay where it was. The intention already lifted the business quite substantially, 48% growth year on year. But now we're going into absolute delivery on purpose of the business. So I think delivery on purpose is the Achilles heel of human nature, it seems.
So as you deliver on the purpose, more and more the money you would. I mean, this wouldn't have been a much more profound message to me. Maybe probably if we were where we were before COVID, because one is looking at it and going, fine, I believe in this purpose of this business. I believe in transformation. And the one thing I've always said to a lot of people, if I were to be allowed to do just one thing only in life, to be able to grow people, there's nothing that, benefits me more and actually brings, joy to my heart than seeing people go from one point to another, going from an A to a B, and you see them a few years later and you go, that's incredible. And the other day I had a call from a youngster who I had probably inspired when he was still a student at university, and he said to me, I became who I am because of seeing you and doing what you do. And to me, it was the best call I could have had on that day. I couldn't even put a face to this guy. And I only saw him probably a year later at a conference, and he says, hey, I'm so-and-so. Then the name rang with me. But for me, if I were to be left alone, to just do that alone, that would be the only thing. So for me, transformation is a big issue. To be able to see somebody go from just being a little crawling caterpillar to now being a butterfly, it's one of the most biggest transformations. So, one is, I believe in this. Now the issue is, how do you make it turn the corner, and to be able to get people to also believe in it beyond just what's written on the wall.
So what's your statement is, so transformation's meaning is to?
So to transform is to create a marked impact.
But you had a statement earlier and you said to transform.
It's transforming spaces, people and the economy.
So what I found, so ours is interesting, very aligned to yours. Ours is, because I found purpose, the word is a starting point. That just gives you insight. You have to start with a word. In the absence of it, you don't have direction. But the true purpose is actually that statement, the transformation of spaces, people. And that became the business strategy. So where we used to only measure, because businesses only measure bottom line, scientifically. There's not many other aspects that are measured as well as the bottom line. So we found that when we start measuring, so our three pillars are people, client growth, and country growth. And all we did is to put systems in place that measures, to create evidence of. And every year we just keep on stretching that target. So to me, the implementation of the purpose gets really exciting when it's measured and when you start showing evidence of it, and then people, because seeing is believing. You know, when we just talk about purpose and we're passionate about it, which I did for a long time, people go, okay, that sounds amazing. But when we start showing them that we can take a youngster from a township outside Vereeniging to become the number one under 30 in his industry. Now, when you have that evidence, and then we take him forward as a leader in our business, then people start going, okay, you are growing people. And when we start showing 2, 3, 4, 10, 15, 20, 30 people like that, then people start believing. So I think that idea of having clear objectives against the purpose and showing proof of purpose starts creating more and more belief in the purpose.
Was there a time when, you know, as you said, and we were talking about it, and we were talking about kids earlier on, and as a child grows and, you know, you see them go to one age to the other, and was there a time when Pepe wanted to walk away from it all and give up the idea?
Of what aspect?
Of the business itself?
Never. Never. I always smile when people go, they go, hey, it's Friday. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, to me, whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like I'm equally inspired. I have never, I started working at 11, so I've worked now for 42 years. I've never in 42 years not felt excited about going into the day. Never, not once in my, even with social phobia. I never ever wanted to stay in bed and put my head under and just go like, I can't face the day. So maybe that's a gift of mine, because even now what comes up for me is my first 14 years, which was quite hectic, where I had my head under my pillow not to hear all the aggression, but even then I still framed things in a positive way. So no, God, it's not in my, it's not there.
There's probably somebody out there listening to us right now and going, but Pepe, you've built a business in and around this, but what has suffered? And the most amazing thing about your journey is that when you found your purpose, all parts of your life improved overall. And to me is, you know, from the day with the egg that you had made nicely for Haiti to how many years have you guys been together now?
35.
35 years.
So 25-year wedding anniversary this year.
Okay, that's incredible.
So I've got a bit of a plan there, and then 35 years together, because we only got married 11 years after we got together. And that includes the slight indiscretion, the period when she left me for the guy who could play guitar. But, you know, my gift was I learned how to play guitar. So
you learn how to play guitar. But, you know, you've managed to have it all balanced. And, you know, I always say to my wife, anything can be engineered. And I think in this book, you've actually engineered the formula to be able to find the balance in all of these things. In as much as you still, you know, beat yourself up and say you're learning out of it, but I think you've engineered something out of this book or out of these books, and I'll get to the second book just now, because the experiment just intrigues me more than anything else. But it's, to me, you've sort of come up with a set of formulas that, you know, one has to be able to think through. But let's go back to the one bit when you say, you know, Akatole says the same thing. He says, stop living in your head and go to the being. You know, your definition is no different or that far from Akatole's one. And Akatole is one of the, you know, most profound producers in this space. Yeah. And he also found his, what do they call it, his miracle in all of the strangest places ever. But a lot of people live in their head. Yeah. And I'd say to you, Pepe, without my head, I can't do anything. I'm an engineer. It's what I do. I measure, I think through everything. I over-measure and measure and calculate and then over-calculate and then, you know, eventually get to a point where I think, what is the risk? And it's how the business is refined to be able. And sometimes people look at me weirdly when I speak from a position of passion rather than from a sense of, so it's what I feel more than anything else. Now, a lot of people will tell you, no, but Pepe, I'm hired to, what do they call it, to be an engineer.
Yeah.
Why are you asking me to now get into my feelings and understand how am I feeling with everything?
Sure, a lot going on in my head now listening to you there. So, because I'm doing academia at the moment, I've shifted my view, not much, but a little bit. So I do believe in balance, and I do believe in magic and in logic. I'm not just a magic guy. And together with my one partner, who's probably the cleverest person that I know, we figured out that wisdom is that healthy balance between magic and logic. I think if you're too logical, you lose out on real wisdom, and if you're too magic and airy-fairy, you might lose out on true wisdom. That said, though, the battle between the head and the heart, factually, this one processes at 2,000 bits per second, this one at 400 billion. This one's 1 gram, this one's 2 tons. This one I chose my wife on, not on this one. This one I started my business on, not on this one. This one I fired a racist on, not on this one. There was, if I had to go and do the analysis and the risk analysis, he would still be working for us and I would have probably tolerated it. But this one told me no. So as I'm saying that, it's not like I override. It would be saying the same thing as money is not important. It's the lifeblood of business. But I don't wake up every morning thinking I must make blood. And I'm quoting Phil Knight because it's so profound. So I am very heart-based, but I'm not illogical. There's times when I use my grey matter, but for the real big decisions in my life, I use my heart. And my heart tells me that there's a shift needed in this world of business, that we need to become more purposeful beyond product and beyond bottom line. And I'm following that gut, that instinct, and seeing where it takes our business, which is an infant. It's only 22. It's only just got the key for life. It's got like 100 years ahead of it.
Incredible that you say that. I mean, even after Gareth had called you a boatman, you still thought, this is my business partner.
Exactly. I could have just gone like, this guy's rude to me, bugger off. But my heart told me, no, this is my other husband.
Incredible. We come to something that has intrigued me as I was getting to the end of the book. I had always understood the concept of wealth, and I had understood it beyond. Probably I would have gone to 4 or 5 of the 8 wealths to a great degree. There came a point where, some point in time in my engineering life, I realized that yes, money is important, but there's a whole lot more. And, my family became important. My relations became important. Who I know and the circles in and around me became important. But I would have just stopped there. And the same way when I realized who I have around me is important, I cut down on number of friends, and I have fewer friends. I have a lot of acquaintances. I know a lot of people because of the business that I've been in and I'm still in, but I have very few friends. But let's talk about the 8 wealths. And to me, it was quite intriguing how you translated them back into business. Because from a life perspective, I see them. Because I've always believed in them. And in defining wealth, and probably from that one summit with Robin Sharma, a lot of things happened there.
That was in 2000 and when was that? 2014.
Yeah.
So I just started after, and that was 2014. So the business was already 16 years old, and I think we just started to earn dividends. So that's how long it took to actually get a return. That's why they say it takes 17 years to be overnight success. Because that's the first time. But even then, I didn't have the sort of money to invest in what that workshop cost me. That Titan Summit, together with my air tickets, was R250,000 for 4 days. I remember, I think I bonded my house, but the business sort of gave me the money back because I brought so much value back in time. And I learned there about those 8 different areas of life. And you know, I learned a lot of other things. I spent every single minute of my flight back to South Africa implementing everything I learned systematically into my life, because I'm very systems orientated. See, that's the engineer side of me. I love systems. As a creative person, I drive people nuts because I'm systems obsessed. But that was so profound because it gave me insight why people with a lot of money are still not happy. We see that all the time. We see people with billions that are still not happy. And I applied that to my life. I started looking at all 8 those areas of my life, and I started measuring them and working on each area, and I started seeing how they influence each other. And then, because I believe a business is a business being, just like we are human beings, I applied the same model to the business. And I realized a business is about spiritual wealth. Purpose is all about spiritual wealth. It's beyond religion, because purpose will strengthen your religion. Doesn't matter what your religion is, it will strengthen it. But purpose is a much higher order for me than just religion, which is man-made conceptually. Purpose is closer to God. And I think health became a massive thing for me, which is the second area of wealth, which we don't realize. We forget often how important our health is. It's our main driver of our system. And family, which is the third area, family, the quality of our family and our relationship with our family, those people closest to us. Then the craft, which is engineer or artist, creative director, advertiser, my craft. And then money is number 5. So I was like, wow, that's amazing. And I kept them in that order. Because I thought, well, if this one's better, it influences this one. Those 2 will influence this one, those 3 this one, those this one. Then this one will become more abundant. And the byproduct of all of these will be number 6, which is your circle of influence, the people that you attract in your life. And hence, over time, a lot of people that were with me kind of left me, new ones joined me, and the really good ones stayed. And then number 7 is adventure, which we don't even consider sometimes. And adventure has forced me to bring so much fun into my work life, because I decided business, if it's not fun, it's not worth being in business. I mean, if purpose is all serious and this heavy save the world stuff, it's not worth it. It has to be fun, and it has to be adventure. And number 8 is the amount that we are able to give back to society or to people around us. And it doesn't have to be monetary, it can be just a smile. So those are the 8, and I started bringing those 8 forms of wealth and working on becoming wealthy in every single aspect of that. And that's an ongoing piece of work. And in the business, the same thing.
Intriguing. You speak of, what do they call it, of culture quite a lot, and culture of your business, and the worry of your of the business growing and adding more people to the business, and how culture sometimes just get diluted through all of that. And to you, it has been a relentless, over and over again, bring up all these issues, reminding people of what the purpose is of the business, and all of that. And we are like about 110, 111 at the current moment. And it's quite a neat number of people that it's easy to influence when you do anything. And when we did the pledging to the gold and blue, so what we did is we've got our purpose written on the wall, and everybody took either gold or blue paint and placed their hand on that same wall where the purpose and our values are. And everybody had such a profound moment from that you and then as it was developing, then the engineer and me started saying, no, leave spaces in between the hands so that when new people come, we can bring them to the wall to come and pledge to the gold and blue, so that they themselves know what we're talking about when we're saying transforming spaces, people, and the economy through mobility. And our values is leadership, learning, caring, and what do they call it, and excellence. And the 4 items have been placed in such a way that we believe we've always been ahead and led in a lot of spaces. We need to maintain that leadership of ours as we transform people through spaces. But you'll see that the word caring is closer to the people, and the excellence is closer to the economy, and then the spaces is all about our learning and our innovation as we do that. The challenge I have, and probably the CEO has thought about it time and again, is what will happen as we bring on, we'll probably bring on another 25 people so that we can grow the business to be able to do what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
You've spoken quite a lot about trying to reinforce this over and over again, and it's a passion of yours. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so implementation, and also, so our business is in headcount double your size now, so we 230, 240 people. It's an ongoing challenge, but as you're speaking, I'm going, well, if I look at any religion, has got millions and millions of followers. So how did they get that right? You know, so. And I'm also conscious, I don't want it to sound like a cult, but cult isn't culture, you know, and if you start looking at religions and you go like, well, what are you saying there? Because there is a belief system there. There's a strong belief system. But it seems like ritual is what's very important to sinking in that purpose into the culture. And ritual to me means repetition of the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, and also delivery on it over and over and over and over again. So over time, every single thing that we develop linguistically is linked into growth. So we'll have our KPI systems called the Joe Grow.
Okay.
You know, we're starting to develop purpose for businesses. We call it Growth Compass. We're starting to track our clients' growth. We call it Growth Tracker. So we use language to bring purpose into every single little ritual action system of the business. Our awards that we give out monthly is linked into the values. We do them every month in our Projo. So I think creating ritual around the culture through repetition, and then also delivery on what you say your purpose is in time, I think makes it scalable, because there's no way that I just want us to stay a small business or medium business. You know, if there's opportunity to double or triple or quadruple the business, I would like to be part of that, because then we can create more impact and we can create more value. And you know, not necessarily just about the making of the money. It's we can show that this methodology works. I think people would want to see proof that it works. So yeah, I think that's my approach at the moment, is systematically implementing it ongoingly, consistently through repetition.
And that's interesting, because as you grow and you create more businesses, and things spin out of what you do, and the beliefs that you carry through the business, and the people in the business believe in. We are at that point in time where we have just created a new business unit, and which will concentrate entirely on commercialization of our stations, commercialization of the business as a whole. And when I talk about it, if you look through a lot of my LinkedIn posts, I talk about transport becoming a lifestyle product, rather than it being being a utility, and you deal with it like water. You're only worried about it when it doesn't come out. But where we fold ourselves into the lives of the people we carry every day. that in itself has its own dynamics, because you breaking out parts of the business, creating new businesses, but you want it to still carry the the culture and the repetition and the rituals that go with the old part of the business, because our old part of the business is built on excellence. We of being the best in everything that we do, and for a business that was built with no playbook. So there is no other business probably in South Africa that looks exactly like ours, an agency like ours that have managed to run a transport entity for this long and be able to do it this cleanly and without any scandals and everything else. And we're proud of that. But it's how do you replicate this over and over again? And I've seen how you guys have gone from, just Joe Public on its own to be able to grow all these other parts of the business. There is something you believe in deeply, which is letting the small men speak. That the smallest voice in the room being able to come up. Where does that come from?
I just want to take one step back because I want to address that question of yours, because I do think about that a lot as well. When you diversify your business, because we're going through that now, I think when the business name remains the same, the purpose should remain the same. But if you start a unit that's got or business with a new name, you should enable it to have its own purpose.
Okay.
That's what I'm following. Again, I'm following what my gut's telling me, because it's similar to me and my son. My son can't have my purpose.
Yeah.
He's got a different name. So any Joe Public, whether it's Cape Town, whether it's Durban, whether it's Amsterdam, Johannesburg, the purpose is going to be growth, to be the fertile soil to grow our people, our clients, and our country. But if we now suddenly start maybe a standalone business or another business in another sort of sector of our industry, and we choose to give it its own name outside of Joe Public, I would work with that business and the leadership of that business to find its own purpose. So I would definitely differentiate between those two. I think it will create more autonomy, and ultimately, if I even think, my view is the world's purpose is love. It's an evolution of mankind to have enough empathy to have selfless and unconditional love, like the sun. That's probably like God's purpose. And each of us have a different purpose, but we're all playing towards the same game. So I think they can complement each other. Definitely.
Incredible. I think it's quite an incredible insight, and from your end, and probably to the one question I had asked later on, a personal gain from the book. Those that know me, they know I have a relentless pursuit for having something done right the first time, and done with a passion, and what do they call it? And to me, one of the things that bother me the most is people who do not have personal pride. But something I've learned from this book, and the second book, is moving from a drive to get better and better, but to where my purpose is more to nurture the soil from which everything will grow. I'd be honest with you, out of the entire book, that to me is my takeaway. I used to have a senior that used to say, if he goes to a conference and he learns just one thing, then he's learned, that was the best conference he's ever been to. To me, this book is important to me because of that one saying. Yeah. Moving from where you think you're the one to drive the change to being the one who enables the change and creating the growth. And where does that come from beyond anything else in your personal life to everything else? How did you come about in being able to realize that?
So and I wrote that book in 2018, so it shows you how long it takes. We were chatting about it, Viru and myself, early on. It's so interesting. Almost 4 years later, this is a new part of my journey, because I'm just listening between the lines of what you're saying. I'm a relentless driver and my expectations are super high. And I started realizing that I scare people sometimes and I break them down, which is counter my purpose, because my purpose is to bring out their best.
Yes.
And then I leave them broken in my wake. And it came from seeing that. It came from wanting to inspire and wanting to but my demeanor is so almost aggressive seen by the other person. My intention might be absolutely pure, but the way I'm viewed, and hence I didn't gain traction, so I had to change my strategy. And I more and more realized that, whether you're a small tree or big tree, you're a tree. I can't expect you to be that tree if you're still that tree.
Yeah.
And it became much more the farming, nurturing approach. And it's something I really put a spotlight on this year specifically, is to almost hand over to something bigger than myself. The chips must fall. I know what my purpose is. I know what my vision is. I'm putting my heart into it. But I can't dictate the speed at which the world changes. And hence I've put more effort into more of a, like, leading from holding the people. Still hold them accountable, but not to that same level of aggression. Because I'm very motivated by excellence. Like, I find excellence is at the heart of fun. The better you are, it's like anything. The better you played basketball, the better you play basketball, the more fun you have.
No, the more fun you have.
The better you do anything,
Yes.
the better you ski, the more fun. The better you work, the more fun. I think most people don't have fun because there's not a high enough level of excellence. But be that as it may, we're all at different places. And I need to start finding people where they're at and not be so arrogant with all my investment in my own growth to expect them to be where I am.
Pepe, at some point in time, you hit a flu and you are now on the Val in bed, and Jasper's lying there on the what do they call it, on a small mattress, and with his pets, and you now suddenly find your new thing to deal with, and you write the second book. I'm still intrigued by the experiment. Please tell me first about the experiment and how the experiment came about. Let somebody smoke, and then how many minutes they smoke a single cigarette, and then you make them read, count the number of words they read per minute, and then you multiply that, and that is the number of words in the chapter. I kept on, every time I went to the next one, I'd say, I want to see the next one, and then you see the next one, and you go, okay. I literally sat down with that book early in the morning. By the evening, I walked out of, what do they call it, out of my studies after having eaten only in between everything else. I said to my wife, I finished reading this book. And she said to me, you only started reading it in the morning? I said, yes. There was no way I could just put it down because I wanted to hear more about the next person. And the intriguing thing is the stories are personal. First, let's talk about the experiment before we get into the book itself, the 20 Habits.
Yeah. So I had no ambition to be an author at all. In fact, I'm not completely truthful there. I thought maybe one day when I'm like 70 and I'm wise, I'm going to write a book.
Yes, when you've bought the boat and you've sailed and
all the stuff that I want to do. Although those things I don't want to do anymore.
Yes.
When I fix the education, I'll write a book. But then I was approached by my publisher, Tracy, and went on this journey. And the intention of the book was to serve entrepreneurs in South Africa.
Yes.
Because I realized, I'm actually starting to think it might be controversial, but it's almost like coming from nothing is an unfair advantage because it can drive you more than most.
That's true.
It's just like, people always go, I come from disadvantage. I'm starting to think if that's not potentially an unfair advantage through what I've experienced, because it made me so relentless in wanting to achieve.
Yeah.
So I wrote the book for people that come from less. But the book's too thick. So I found out subsequently that 350 pages is too much. It's intimidating on the shelves. So I heard that under 200 pages, that's what you need to go for. And then this idea came, I was dead sick. I had a very bad retrenchment at work. It affected me very badly.
Mm-hmm.
It was a performance retrenchment, so it was not economical, but it was just a bad experience, and I got very sick afterwards. And I had this idea for this flippin' book in 2019 in June, and it was I realized that habits is what defines success. And we all have habits, and I don't call them good or bad, they're limiting or liberating.
Yes.
So they can either limit us, because I used to smoke, I loved it. I used to drink, I loved it, but it limited me.
Yeah.
And I realized through my life, I liberated myself. I replaced limiting habits with liberating habits. So I first had this idea about habits. It all happened literally in a moment. All of this that I'm telling you now happened in a second. And I thought, I'm going to take 20 people. I still sketched a cigarette box in my notebook. I'm going to take 20 people, because a box of Stuyvesant has 20 cigarettes. So I'm going to take 20 people, and I'm going to interview, and they have to be smokers, because that's already, in my view now, a limiting habit.
Yeah.
And I'm going to interview them on what is their most limiting habit, and what would be a habit to liberate, that could liberate that habit.
Yeah.
Not knowing what I'll find. And then what I'll do is I'll time their smoking speed during the interview. So I'll interview while they smoke, and I'll time the time it takes them to smoke a cigarette. And then I'll make them read. I had a Word document with one of the chapters from the first book, and I timed the reading speed over a minute. So then between the smoking time, the cigarette smoking time, and the reading speeds time, I calculated how many words each chapter will have to be if I wrote it bespoke for that person. So X minutes at so much per second, reading speed was 1,400 words, or 1,432 words. And then I set out to write each chapter for each of those people, so that they can smoke a cigarette and read their chapter, and when they put it out, they'll be finished. That was, and it worked out like that. And it was an amazing experience, because not one person mentioned that smoking was a limiting habit. Everyone was speaking about, I speak ugly to myself in my head. Like imposter syndrome came up a lot, procrastination came up a lot. People spoke about swearing, drinking, eating, overeating, spending. And then I realized all these things out of those 20 people that they spoke about are all the stuff that we all struggle with.
Yes.
And I just countered it with my own journey, and wrote the book in lockdown in the end.
It's an incredible book, because when you read through the stories that Pepe had gone through, and if you've read the one book, then to you get to be able to remember a whole lot of that. Talking about that, when you learned how to ski, I've got a few notes I've made that I call lessons from the slopes. First lesson is, as they teach you, before you learn to go fast, you must learn to stop. Because that's the first thing they teach you in order.
And then later,
yes,
later the hockey stop, much better than the
pizza.
than the pizza.
So ultimately, when you were there on the black, slopes, and you were like now facing this adventure of going down the hill. I mean, I know the exhilaration of now standing there and looking at the slope. I'm still probably on to the slope before the one that you are on now. I still have to go up there and just face the fear, and I know the screaming that goes with it. It's you're in between. I'm going to fall. I am okay. I am. And all of that, but you're just going down. It's just at speed, and in a few seconds it's gone.
Yeah.
There's a lot you've learned from that, and you tell a lot about it. To me, is if you were to share with somebody who hasn't taken that level of what do they call, because adventure is a big part of you growing and everything else.
Yeah.
How would you probably advise somebody who wouldn't naturally go skiing or something of that sort to be able to take themselves to that edge? Because we talk about taking yourself to the edge.
Yeah. Look, it ties into quite a lot of things. When I think about it, the first chapter was about stepping in.
Yes.
And suffering for 20 years of my life with severe social phobia. The beginning of the overcoming was stepping into public speaking. So I suppose the later on chapter that touched on skiing, they're all interlinked, because it showed me how easy we become complacent in life. And that's why I related to the green slope. You know, so I'm not saying everyone should do extreme sports. I love a little bit more of extreme sport. You know, I've parachuted and I love skiing. I do water skiing very well. So I love the slightly more, I'm not saying everyone should do that, but I do like the notion of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. So if you don't like public speaking, or you're the quiet one in the boardroom, push yourself to speak up.
Yes.
Because often you might have the best idea out of everyone there, and you need to be heard. So just push yourself to do those things that at face value scares you. You know, if heights scare you, try and climb a tree, and overcome. You won't overcome the fear, but you learn to deal with the fear, and it's so exhilarating. This skiing thing, sure. I mean, that's my true love. If I think of a sport, I mean, we live in the wrong country for it, but I do it once a year. And the last 3 years, I started skiing black slopes. The last trip, I almost died because when you fall on the black slope, you don't stop. You don't stop. You go from the top because it's 45 degrees at least. I mean, you go. I mean, I fell far, but I live to tell the story. But I related between green slope almost being that one where we get stuck in jobs that we don't love. We get stuck in relationships, and we kind of stick to it because
it's comfortable.
It's comfortable, you know. And then as you start going the more and more slopey, you fall easier. And I relate it to life. We don't like doing the things that we fail at, but the failing is actually what grows us. And hence I realized that the most fun is actually the black slopes. It's the one where you get to the bottom and you feel alive because you've just cheated death. So I think it's a beautiful parallel to the way we live our lives. And I realized that real fun is actually on that edge of fear.
That's intriguing. I'm trying to, please do not mind me, I'm trying to get to the questions that have come from our viewers. So I am trying to get right there to be able to see the questions themselves.
No, I was assuming that. I mean, I would probably get worried if you were like, this Pepe guy. No, it's all good. And yeah, she's skiing. And then you started speaking about off-piste. I was like, no, I'm not there yet. But that will come in future when I spend a bit more time because I only go like 7 days a year. So it's not enough,
as yet. My worry would be you getting hurt and ending up like Michael Schumacher.
Oh, yeah. No, listen, I am into self-preservation at the same time though. There's a lot still to do. So I don't take uncalculated risk when I do those things.
Okay. Now, having gone through the second book, and I think for me, one of the most profound chapters was the one where somebody was talking about, you know, self-limiting or sort of talking themselves down into doing certain things. You speak a lot about stepping in, and stepping in is something that culturally probably, you know, a lot of South Africans are thought to be, they equate it to being humble. And for me, it's how do we manage those things? How do we actually manage the culture versus the stepping in? Because you know you're seen as not being you know, humble when you like always the one that's stepping in.
Sure, that's interesting. I haven't thought of it in that context because I would have said they're not the same. But I hear what you're saying. That you could be perceived, because in that instance, stepping in might be the guy who always speaks up,
yes,
and the loudest guy in the room, and it can be perceived as that. I've never thought of it like that. I'm actually trying every day now. I'm working on actually speaking less, and enabling other people to speak more. But I would still argue potentially that could just be an excuse. You know, we tend to very easily blame everything around us, whether it's government or politics or economy or this. You know, there's always a lack of taking responsibility. I actually think one of the biggest opportunities for our country is to not demand, but to start inspiring people to take more responsibility.
Yes.
Like really take real responsibility. So even now, in my 35-year relationship with my wife, we've got strong wills and we can bump heads. And it's very easy to kind of try and blame my wife. But I'm more and more taking responsibility and trying to change my way of being in order to create flow. And taking that into all relationships and all parts of business life. So I think we need to take more responsibility. So this thing of not speaking up, to say that maybe it's perceived as being arrogant, I think that might be a little bit of an excuse. Take responsibility for your gift and your potential that you have as a human being, each of us, and start stepping in and start speaking up and start making a difference. I mean, I often hear people, yeah, but I only work in this business and I'm right at the bottom, I can't change things. That's bollocks. You can. Every single person has influence. I really believe that. Or at least give it a shot. So I'm setting out to change education in our country. That sounds like a pipe dream. I'm going to give it a shot.
It's not a pipe dream. I'll get to that. Viewer is telling me that everybody's so mesmerized by you that they're not even asking questions, because by this time there'll be a stack of questions. But I guess it's one of those changes where we've gotten to a point where we've moved off, a lot of leadership for IR and all sorts of other things, and now talking to personal self-mastery, and people are listening to what they can do to change their own lives. And for me, it's one of those important things that people, if they can be able to find the magic that lies in these books, because seriously, there's magic in these books. Every time I would get to the end of the chapter, I would say to my wife, "This is an important book," and all of that. Talking about, what do they call it? About people stepping in and taking leadership. And maybe I didn't warn about this one, but maybe it's good that I didn't warn you about this one. The question I always ask all my guests, and it's a very simple question. How do we grow more Pepe Marais? As a nation, how do we create more leaders, more people who are willing to be able to step into the light, the entrepreneurs that will, it is said that we're not going to get this economy anyway unless by, how do we do more out of that? I mean, out of adversity came, what do they call it, an incredible man, and ultimately 2 beautiful books. And probably you're going to tell me there's a new one coming soon. But it's, it's when you finish your PhD, then there'll probably be a book after that. But it's, how do we grow more leaders like that?
So I would definitely not want to grow a lot more Pepe Marais because I do believe in diversity completely. I'm an absolute believer in diversity, being at the heart of creativity. And creativity is not art. Creativity is the ability to think. And 2 heads are always better than one, So, but growing leaders, which is why I so believe in the educational system, needs to be changed. Because the amount of trauma that happens to people from day naught, from birth, over the first 6 formative years, it must be so huge, because even the people who go, "There's nothing wrong with me," when you start digging, there's something wrong. There's something wrong. Whether it's someone that said you're stupid. I met a guy in his mid-40s. He broke down crying at dinner one night. It wasn't a friend, it was a friend of a friend, but I started having conversation. And it scratched under the surface, and we found out the teacher told him that he's stupid when he was like grade 2 or something. And he's a failure in the eyes of society in life because he's amounted to nothing, because he was told that he's nothing. So this is a person that comes out of a good home that a teacher told he's stupid, and it played out in his adult life. So these things, they are big, and they impact us in adult life. There's not enough people flourishing in this world I mean, in South Africa, the top 1% of this country earns 67% of all the money. I mean, 78% of people can't retire. I mean, it's not even as if this person who's earning 100,000 rand a month can retire. So we're not living this absolute, we're not flourishing at all. And that's at the top end. So for me, it's like a big thing. Education is almost the only, the way I see it, it's the only systematic way of assisting people in mass, in scale, is the educational system. But it's IQ based, and it shouldn't be. There should be emotional intelligence should be taught at school. Spiritual intelligence should be taught at school. Resilience should be taught at school. And we keep school very one-dimensional, that it's IQ based. I think there's a place for IQ, but it should be 25% of the schooling system.
I'm intrigued that you say everybody has a trauma. Mine is I'm anti-red pens. I do not like them. It's if you write on a note and it comes in red writing, or you write me an email and it comes in red ink, I'm not going to read it. It's because that's how we were marked in school.
There we go. There we go. There's trauma there.
Trauma there.
We laugh about it, but it's the
there
truth.
There is definitely trauma there.
Yeah.
I am anti-red writing. It's like I look at it, and I had to go through CVs yesterday, and I saw one that had a blue, a green, and when it got to the red, I didn't read it anymore. I just stopped it, and I thought, who could send you what do they call it, a CV with the red writing on it? But it was just my trauma speaking.
There we go. I'm not good enough.
Yes. Now, having gone through all of that, and we look at the a lot more of what sits in growing greatness, the journey to self-mastery. Pepe Marais gets unhappy about salad dressing, shoots out an email, and then the email ends up out in the public. You've grown an incredible business. It's now, at the same level as the best superstars that are backed up by multinationals and all sorts of other things. How does one continue to, and I think probably it's a question that comes also from all of us, as what do they call it, as people from the Gautrain. How does one live through, what comes from the criticism and everything else? And you did an incredible thing, and you not only apologize, but you learn from it. But how does one grow out of, criticism and be able to build from there?
So, I'm going to quote, I just came across something that resonated with me. It's in my reflections book. So that was a fascinating experience. That actually gave me insight of how much more I need to grow, because I responded on emotion, and I was angry in the moment, but I also just came from a funeral, so my guards were a bit down. I was a bit sort of not traumatized, but I was saddened by one of my close colleagues who lost a mother. And then, of course, I'm principled. So to me, whether you take something without asking or stealing, it's just, I see it as the same thing. It might not be the same thing. But my response was so unleadership-like. To send out an email, all staff, that goes, if I catch the person who took my salad dressing, I'll fire you. I mean, because I also don't see myself as the guy at the top, I still see myself as the normal guy. I'm one of you. Yeah. One of the guys I mentored said to me the other day, Pep, I speak, his name's Tepo Mogorosi. Yeah, I mentor him personally now. I'm very vested into his growth. And he said to me, I used to be so scared of you. You're such a nice guy. How can you be scared of me? I don't understand it. But we don't realize our position and that what comes with it. And it was really, but I learned out of it. And I learned, I learned so much. I can write another book just on that one incident. But the bigger thing for me is, if we don't make mistakes, we don't grow. So if you're a leader and you expect it never to make mistakes, how are you ever going to grow? We don't grow without mistakes. Proper, like deep growth. When you burn your finger, you learn about heat. You don't learn just reading that the stove is hot and now you understand heat. You have to burn your finger. It's cellular learning. It's learning at a deeper level than just one-dimensional learning. So I think making such a big leadership mistake and then being slated for 3 months in social, saying, well, this is the amazing Mr. Growing Greatness. He's an arsehole. And having to be confronted with it and like having to live with it and deal with it. But it moves through, and a year later I can say that I've learned so much from it, and I won't send out the email easily like that again. But it's part of growth. But there's an interesting thing that I learned recently on criticism. The two sides of the coin. It's a new learning. I learned it literally last week, and I'm applying it. On the one side is it's not about me. So when you get criticism or you get criticized, you go, well, is this really about me? Because maybe it's the other person's problem with me.
Mm-hmm.
And if that does not work with me not feeling better after I did that introspection, then the other side of the coin is that is about me. And I've got some issues that I have to resolve within myself. Because if I feel criticized and I feel, and this is tying into my third book, which is going to be called Coming to Grips with My White Wound. Mm-hmm. And realizing a lot of stuff that I find, or that I used to find offensive, is mostly my own issues. So you got to just look at yourself. You got to go like, well, I'm feeling I'm criticized now. What's my own issues? What do I have to fix in myself? And the other side of it is maybe someone else has got an issue that they need to fix. It's ongoing work.
We've got questions coming up. One from my letter is, would you say there's a difference between stepping in and showing up? Which is more, leadership and how growing leadership, the second part I'm not getting right, but between stepping in and showing up, is there a difference? And which one would you put more closer to the formula of leadership and growing leadership? Yeah.
So again, these are just my views. They're definitely not right. I said it in both my books. I said, please don't take this as like the Holy Grail. This is just my views and my experience. And when I hear a question like that, I can just tell you what my thoughts are. You might find 10 other people with different thoughts on it. I would say showing up. If I have to use a boardroom, yes, of course, if you come to a meeting and you take your seat, you're showing up. Stepping in is contributing. Stepping in is actually making your voice heard, and even more so if it scares you, or if you're in fear of not looking good, because that's often why we don't speak up, because we're afraid to look stupid. And that's something that's conditioned from tiny, being a child, because when you speak up at school, the other kids laugh at you, maybe. But I've learned through the years that just coming from a place of knowing nothing is maybe one of the most powerful things. So definitely I would get closer to stepping in, having your voice heard, and practice it. And even if you have to ask sometimes and say, well, I don't know what you're talking about, can you please be clear? Like, just get your voice to be heard, because not enough voices are heard in boardrooms.
Okay, so here's one. How critical are you of yourself? And the other question I'm going to ask at the end, because it's much more important, and how often do you introspect?
Okay, so on the critical one, a lot of people assume that I'm very hard on myself and that I'm highly critical of myself. So the first thing I can say is, I love myself. I really do. And that's a great starting point, is to check how much you love yourself. Go and look at yourself in the mirror, maybe tonight or after the session. Just go and look in a mirror, on your own, in your own eyes, and try and say out loud to yourself, I love you. I do that every day in the mornings as part of my reflection, because I've realized that we expect people to see us, but we don't see ourselves. So I don't speak ugly to myself in my head, never. Not for the past 14 years, not a word. I value myself and I love myself, and based on that, I can't say that I'm hypercritical of myself. I expect a lot from myself because I expect a lot from other people. So my example needs to be my example, but it's, yeah. And then there was a second question.
How often do you introspect?
Oh, so I'm big on self-reflections, morning and evenings.
Okay.
I do a lot of work. I've got an amazing coach I've got 3 business coaches. So I'm also a big believer in business coaching. I've got 3 different coaches at the moment. So with that comes serious sessions of introspection. But yeah, I'm a big on reflection, introspection. I don't sit and ponder the whole day. I'm in action. I'm in action mode. But in the mornings between 7 and 8, and in the evenings between 6 and 7, I do introspection.
The one question that I would have loved to ask last, but there's another question that has come through. Now that the sailboat, the sports car are not really high on top of the list, what does success look like for Pepe? And beyond the PhD and the next book, and getting the business to $500 million to $1 billion and all of that, where is Pepe going?
Yeah, you mentioned the yacht. That was a big dream of mine. X amount of million by 50, buy a yacht, sail the world. And that's now become something completely different. It's interesting how purpose inspires a more profound vision than monetary base. And also interesting that the money then naturally came, so I can buy the yacht. But I don't need the yacht. Success is... I've got a very strong definition of success. It's too long to go verbatim, but harmony and joy, big part of my... I love to create... I'm not succeeding always, but I'm working towards creating harmony and joy, both in work environment and in a home environment. So a place that's harmonious and joyful is high on my agenda. That will be success. Once we have a working environment that's truly harmonious and joyful, I think I would have achieved success. Making a significant difference would be, I would deem a success. Making a significant difference to our country. And then my PhD I'm only at my MBA level now. I should finish this year with my MBA and then go straight into PhD. And that is towards my vision of creating impact in education, but starting with purpose for South Africa as a country.
Incredible. Somebody is asking, any thoughts on some of the common threats that limit people from reaching their potential?
The only answer I can give to that, because I so believe in it, is start digging inside yourself. Try and go on that journey of going, why am I on this planet? Like that bigger question, like why am I really here? Why am I in this relationship? Why am I in this job? Why am I there? Because you could be love. Your word could be love. And then how you play that out is how you bring love into your relationship. If you're a parent, how you bring love, unconditional love into that space. If you're at work, how do you bring love into that work? You could be inspiration. Then you can start saying, how do I bring inspiration to every aspect of my life? So I would say, for me, the key of unlocking potential is to define your strategy, because we don't know. And because we don't know, we don't have a plan. So you don't have a 5, a 10 year, 15, a 20. I've got a 25-year plan. I'm quite far down it. And everything that I put down in 2007 towards 2032 has happened because my purpose inspired a 25-year plan. So we do these plans for businesses, 5-year plans, but we don't do these things for our own lives. So I would say really start thinking around what could be your greater purpose. It doesn't have to be like world changing. It can just be relationship changing. I am caring, and display caring in everything that you do, even for yourself.
I've got two questions playing in my head, and I want to ask one. And the incredible formula. If you do 100.001% of what you do better every day and every part of your life, in how many years would you have become 37%? In 1 year, you'd become 37 times better at what you do. That's an incredible formula.
Yeah.
And maybe the mathematician and the engineer in me was even baffled by the fact that if you take 1.001% away from 100%, and you did that every day, you actually are in a regressive mode rather than actually in a progressive one. That's an incredible formula there.
So the first formula was shared by a friend of mine, Catherine Madley, and it resonated with me because I'm so interested in growth.
Yeah.
And to see the compounding effect over 365 days of just 1/100th more a day.
Yes.
So maybe factually, if it played out, if you really measured, I don't know if it will go 37 times, but you definitely just that minuscule little bit better every day. But I have seen that. I mean, I've seen that in our business. Our product used to be really not great, and I started measuring it, and just systematically, and 5 years later, we're best in category.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in our industry. So it's profound. But I then did that I thought, let me reverse the maths. I was dumbfounded by it because mathematically, it goes backwards. And hence I did start thinking about the truth of if we're not progressing, we are slow, we're actually dying. We are dying. You know, you're dying from the age of 30 till the day they put you in a box. If you're not every single day improving your way of being. And mathematically it sort of supported that assumption. And I suppose it's just such an incredible journey to embrace that growth mindset of just opening yourself up to your potential.
I've got a question here. What advice can you give to somebody who's trying to break those limiting habits?
Replace it with a liberating one. So and again, this actually I learned also at the Titan Summit. I was inspired by a guy I met there called Rich Habits. He wrote a book called Rich Habits. I credit him in the beginning of my book. He studied the difference between people who get filthy rich and those who remain not poor, but they don't achieve real wealth. And the difference between those people are habits. So what I realized what I was doing was I didn't just give things up, I replaced them. So if you've got a limiting habit, let's say it's smoking, and you want to give it up, then replace it with eating carrot sticks, as an example. You know, like find something else that could become a habit. So I've made a habit of drinking water. I mean, I drink a hell of a lot of water now. And that's how I replaced the sort of habit of having socially, even socially. You know, you get quite used to drinking your glass of wine or your beer. So I would definitely say replace a limiting habit, but find a liberating habit. You know, exercise is another great liberating habit. Yeah.
This is interesting. We've just run a poll in the background, and we just said, please share with us what are the limiting habits you may think may be limiting to your progress in life, family, career, and others. Procrastination has come right on top. Perfectionism has come as the second one. Negative self-thoughts on 15%, self-doubt on 18%, and not being your best friend or not loving yourself enough is 3%. I guess our people love themselves quite a lot. Comparing yourself to others is coming at 13%. This is an interesting point. It's fascinating.
Procrastination, big one, massive one for sure. A difficult one, I would say, to overcome. That one about not the ugly speak in our own heads. I can highly recommend mirror work. That I started that in 2009 in Cannes. It was an insight from a then business coach I had, and I just tried it. And I remember the first day, I was completely alone at the Hotel Martinez, and I went to the mirror and I looked myself in my eye and I went, I love you, and I blushed. My mother's a blusher, so I still blush a bit now and again. I went blood red, but I was on my own, so I thought, geez, man, if you embarrassed in front of yourself to say you love yourself, there's a lot of work to be done here. So I can highly recommend it, but again, it's one of those things, if you only do it once today just to test, and you then never do it again, or if you do it for 2-3 days. I've done it now for 13 years, 12 years, every day. So it just becomes a little ritual of showing, actually not self-appreciation, actually respect for the Creator. You know, that's given you this opportunity, given me this opportunity to live. And through that process, I've stopped speaking, I've eradicated all negative language to myself out of my head.
On the opposite side, the poll said good work ethic, 30%, kindness, 27%,
Lovely.
exercise, so these are good habits that one should adopt to break the bad habits. Reading, 13%, planning, 10%, and then punctuality doesn't come up tops, which is quite strange. But to us, punctuality is hygienic. So to us, a train being on time, it has to be on time. So it's not something that we think we have to do. It's and
hygiene factor.
nature, it's a hygiene factor. So probably that's why it falls. There's a question here from Liolo. What are your thoughts concerning every employee being a coach and a leader to deliver greater organizational value? So how, probably the thoughts, the question is, how do we get everybody to be, let people coach each other and lead with each other? Because for us, leading is not about leadership in the sense of the hierarchy of the organization, but it's about the leadership of selves, and that's why it's one of our greatest values. The leadership of others, the leadership of projects, the leadership of you being a leader, a thought leader in a space. And probably you're always asking, what are your thoughts about getting every employee to embrace the coaching and leading as a practice?
Yeah, I actually don't have an answer for that one. It's a very tough one. Let me say that I do agree with leadership not being sort of reserved for people in leadership positions. Like we're all leaders of our own lives, outside of the organizational structure, we're all leaders. We lead our own lives. I'm just thinking that question through. How do you really get people? Well, here's one, and I think as a business we still have a lot of room for growth in that area, because we tend to over manage. And I think we've over-managed to this point because our aspirations are so high and we don't trust enough yet. So if I just think there's certain people now that I give more and more autonomy because I trust them at a high level. So to me, I can link trust to it. So if you say, so how do we get those people to step into their own leadership? So here's another thought. I mean, it took COVID to show us that people can work remotely and still be very, very engaged and still be very, still deliver. Pre-COVID, if I had to go to my board and say, listen guys, I've got this thought. Let's work 2 weeks a month from home. They'll go, you mad. People won't work. That's how little we trust our people. So maybe my net answer on that question is start giving people the trust. Start giving them more autonomy and trust them to get down. And I'm speaking now to myself, because that's the process I'm going into now, is giving people more autonomy and more trust.
Pepe, ultimately the question that sits there, you're a brave man, tackling education in our country. But I've been reading through a lot of books. A lot of people, when they found their purpose, one of the best things that they do is give of their time, give of their, whatever they've made and all of that. And you're giving your time to be able to grow South Africa. And our last speaker, we spent a fair bit of time with him about education. It's one thing to fix a system that's broken from an education perspective. It's a completely different thing to grow critical thinking and creativity. In the work that you do at the current moment with the schools, how much of that plays a part?
So I've been working now with a school in Soweto, Dobsonville, since 2008, so it's 13 years. And then the Diepsloot schools, probably 7, 8 years. And at the moment, we do good work there, and we're very supportive. We deploy a lot of, we've got 4 projects that we found over the years work the best. And I've got a partner in that endeavor. It's a business CSI, but it's mine and my partner that started with me, called Bronwyn. But for now, it's almost a hygiene factor for me, in terms of when I get to where I'm aiming to get to, I want the credibility that I truly am interested in education. I don't just want to be some creative guy who's got an idea. So hence I've been getting my hands dirty for a very, very long time. So in our schooling system, creativity it's hardly present. And when you speak creativity, people always or often get confused with creativity and art. So writing, singing, dancing, painting, those are subsets of creativity that are art forms. But real creativity, to your point, is critical thinking. It's the ability to think, to really think. I mean, there's an amazing saying that says, I think it was 1% of people think, 4% think they think, and 95% would rather die than think. So, and that's again to that point of step in, because when you open your mouth in a pressured situation, you offer opinion, you offer your thinking. So immense amount of work to do in a system that is as broken as the South African educational system, which is totally and utterly broken. I mean, the truth's not being told of what's going on the ground. But, if there's no problems, there's no solutions. So I suppose we must be grateful for problems if you love solutions.
Pepe, me and you, we can talk until the cows come home, and they are about to come home at 5 o'clock. But
that went.
That went quickly, and that was incredible. I think from the comments here that have come through, it's like truly liberating. I am blown away, and I'm literally mesmerized. All that's left for me is to thank you, and I want to do it in a style that is, what do they call it, that has been made famous by Nelson Mandela, and most people never understood it. He never said thank you, he said I thank you. And it has always been a personal thing for him to thank you personally, and for me, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for the books, and we look forward to more in the coming few years. And thank you to Tracy McDonald for making the books available to us. Thank you for the staff for staying on, as always, for such a long time. And there's also Dr. Battle, one of our US authors that have come on board, and thank you for being on board. And to MacComs and ICT for making this possible, thank you. And to the one person who never thanks herself when she sends me this message, to Viewer for making all the arrangements and getting it to where it is. Thank you, sir.
So then, I don't want to have the last word, but then I'm going to start taking that practice of Madiba, who is, next to Jesus Christ, my only other inspiration in this world. So I thank you. And I must say, I was so blown away by our first engagement and by this purpose of your company. And it just gave me so much. It was just amazing to find another business that's so inspiring. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. I thank you.